Lady team, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to Worth It Then, Worth It Now, an ongoing segment where I look at games from yesteryear. We're kind of focusing in on 10 plus year old games this year. Get that decade or so separation from modern game development, let's say. And today we're having a look at Company of Heroes, the original and the best. Well, I mean, it depends how you look at original. There are a couple of different versions on Steam. There's legacy versions. I don't even know if you can still buy them, but currently there is one just called Company of Heroes, right? It says its release date is in 2006, and it's an all-in-one. It's got Opposing Fronts and Tales of Valor, which were the expansions. I think they added at least the British, I know that for sure, but they also added lots of campaigns, and it's all folded into one clean launcher. I still remember back in the day, Relic doing their own thing, and it always was a bit messy, deconflicting different versions, etc. I had some early LAN parties, a dining room table with like 4 computers all sitting on it playing Company of Heroes, so I have very fond memories of this game, but it was a little bit of a mess around in its day. But now, like I said, I've got this in my library. You can pick it up for $5, and it's as simple as just booting it up and pick your campaign. It's interesting as a bit of a compare and contrast. This has been floating around the back of my mind. I have a group of friends from Hell Let Loose, which is kind of like my personal Dota, right? I play it too much and it brings out the worst in me. We've all got a game like that. But this particular group are quite fond of Company Heroes 3. They play it competitive, and I've been playing it with them recently. And I've been enjoying it, the interplay. It still has the spirit of Company of Heroes as someone who played a lot of 1 back in the day. So I think almost uniquely, I have a bit of perspective as someone from the OG days who's also been quite wrapped up in 3, playing PvP especially, to then go back and play this and be able to compare it retroactively. It is interesting, it's very different. I know a lot of people are down on Company Heroes 3, especially like the campaign, etc., but you can't deny that the moment to moment is very clean. The sticking and snapping to cover, the time to kill is really quick, and you're punished for misplays. You put a blob of infantry into an MG nest, it's gone. Whereas playing this again, it's a lot more, well, look, by comparison, the correct term would probably be sloppy or loose. That's not to say it's bad at all, it's just an earlier version of what's been refined in following games. I'm sure 2, which is a blind spot for me, I never really played Company Heroes 2. And yet it was very, very prolific and popular. A lot of people played it. But 2 probably had a very clean system as well. Anyway, my point is, it's interesting going back and you can see the pitch. I don't want to say tech demo. This was an incredibly high profile game when it released. A cinematic AAA mainstream RTS game we had you playing, Band of Brothers or Saving Private Ryan, the video game. In fact, it does a wonderfully, dark bait and switch in the opening cutscene. It looks like it's going to one-to-one do a Saving Private Ryan taking on one random soldier in landing craft, but that culminates in him basically doing a slow walk up the beach as the rest of his squad is decimated, and he gives into lost morale. And that's still an iconic shot that's stuck with me forever, where he just falls to his knees alone on the beach and then gets riddled with an MG. It's dark, but it's very arresting. And then you go in with the second wave, and it has a very clean transition between, I guess dated cutscene into dated engine, but still far more inventive and clever than a lot of modern fare. In fact, the cinematic aspect of this, again, is what always stuck with me. I actually played a lot of 1v1 Company Heroes way back in the day. I really did enjoy the interplay, but the campaign I always loved. Even if it is a bit of a beat for beat America, hoorah, invading and saving the world, that kind of perspective that a lot of media already has covered. But what can I say? It's very well done, and it's a great guilty pleasure. Might be worth ruminating on Relic at the time as well. Now here's a hot take, hottest of hot takes. I don't particularly like Dawn of War 1 that much, or rather, when I compare Dawn of War 1 to the next generation step that they take, which would be Company Heroes and Dawn of War 2, I find them to be interchangeable. They're very much the same game, but different skin. In a way, like I'm being a little bit derivative, but not facetious. Just to give you an idea, the mechanics and the concepts underpinning the design philosophy of Company Heroes 1 and Dawn of War 2 are generationally advanced, and they brought the RTS from what I would call an old-fashioned turtle-heavy, almost encouraging the player not to engage with their opponent or the battlefield, to sit back, build pylons, as it were. StarCraft, as much as I love it, same philosophy. Turtle in your base in the corner of the map and send your dudes out when it suits you. One of the really big iterations when Company Heroes and Dawn of War 2 came along, because they're within like a year or two of each other on the back of Dawn of War 1, and it's all the same company, is when they basically introduced the capture point sector system and what is ultimately a game mode at the time that you hadn't seen outside of shooters, you know, domination. 3 victory points and you had to control the majority of them. In order to win the game, you had to actively go out there and control the battlefield and engage on a tactical level. You couldn't just wait to build up your comfortable turtle base born blob of RTS units, this just super mush wall that you throw at their wall. And that in turn created all sorts of focus fire problems in the olden days as well, right? My blob of 50 dudes versus your blob of 50 dudes, and yet we're clicking them on one unit at a time to focus them down. A different time, to be sure. But what Company Heroes really pioneered was having to control so many different spots on the table, too many plates to spin, as it were. And so you'd be spread thin and you'd be forced back down to a micro level of individual units. And then that's when you're snapping it to green and yellow cover comes in. And it's much looser here because it was obviously a first run. Much more forgiving, right? If your dudes are in a trench, they've got heavy cover. They don't really have to snap to a wall or anything like that. But that's the magic of this, especially it's going to be more apparent in things like actual PvP or skirmishes, and probably later in the campaign. Again, I've only dipped back in for a trip down memory lane, a bit of B-roll. But that idea of the enemy's trying to take 5 different things off of you and you're trying to take 5 things off of them, which means that any given time it will be a duel between 1, 2, 3 units, and you're going to try and micro move them around cover to try and leverage DPS against exposed units. The philosophy was there. It's still quite excellent in Company Heroes 3, but all these years later, it's amazing to see how well realized and like I said, a generational jump forward it was for the RTS genre. Now, small brain midwits, all they're going to hear is that I'm saying Dawn of War 1 is bad or StarCraft is bad. No, I just think that it was from a different time, and that's the best that we had at the time. But Relic really should be praised for iterating upon the RTS genre in such a powerful way. I haven't really kept pace with like Dawn of War 3. I hear 4's been announced. I'll have to check in with that. But all of that said, going back to the campaign and just watching the cinematic cutting, you know, I've done 1 or 2 missions. You go up the beach, take it, blow up the bunkers. It is such comfort food. It is really quite good. I'm doing paratrooping in behind now and trying to blockade roads and stop convoys and take points. And yeah, look, I'm going to blob a bit because guilty pleasure's going to guilty. But I guess the real main takeaway, apart from me obviously waxing about the history of this series and what it did for the space, is that it really does still hold up. It'd be a great first RTS if you've never played anything like that before. If you're someone that's watching this, maybe you've stumbled across it, or maybe you're from my channels and you enjoy things like Band of Brothers, but maybe you're not a huge RTS guy. I've met plenty of dudes over the years that love Company Heroes, but would probably tell you they're not an RTS dude. They probably never did a skirmish. They probably never played multiplayer. This package, like I said, it's a couple of bucks, and I think there's 6 campaigns in it. So there's the one from the original, which is what I'm looking at, but there's all this other stuff from the 2 expansion packs that have been folded in since times past. There's like a Tiger Ace one, and I think I remember it vaguely, almost like Fury, the campaign. Oh, I don't know, my imagination might be filling in the gaps, but there's a lot here, and I think you'd be mad not to give it a go. Call it a palate cleanse. Maybe you're almost ready to watch Band of Brothers again, but it hasn't been 12 months, you know, the obligatory yearly watch. You're 6 months through and you want to get that same fix, maybe play this instead. It might just do the job for you. Anyway, I don't want to waffle. Company Heroes, it's really good. It holds up so well, and you can tell by the smile on my face, I'm really enjoying these trips down memory lane. I don't want to ruminate too hard on the quality of games these days and why I'm enjoying the nostalgia trip so much. I just want to enjoy the trip, and I don't know, maybe you're on board and you're enjoying it with me. Anyway, Company of Heroes, it's on sale at the time of this video, super cheap, super packed with content, and it super holds up. Bugger it, we'll try and tie that together. Anyway team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.